All right, good afternoon, all. I'm having issues with my camera, so unfortunately, you get to see an image of my dog. We'll give it a couple more minutes for everyone else to join up. Can I get a thumbs up, letting me know that everyone could see the screen, my screen share? Okay, great, thank you. All right. So today we're going to talk about leadership in teams. And one of the things I want to point out is that as we talk about this idea of working in groups, you've probably seen this already with the teams you're already working on while in class, and you've probably been on teams while you've been on co-op, right? And so one of the things to keep in mind, and what I'm asking you to consider, is really consider how you are actually interacting with the folks on your team, and examine for yourself, what does that look like? And when you think about how you're strong in some teams versus other teams is a consideration. Or when we think about how you take the lead in some aspects of a group project, and then sometimes take the back seat, right? And so what I want for you to consider is really how we interact as individuals on a team, but also, in a sense, understand the role leadership plays as it relates to management, as it relates to team dynamics. Okay, so to kick things off, I do have a short video I want to share with you, and to sort of help put this in context.
When teams are able to see what they're made of and the strengths that are part of that team really come to the table, they're more cohesive, they're a stronger team, they're connected, and they really can leverage off of each other. And the more that they take a deeper dive into that, it makes them even more powerful at what they're doing. It almost kind of unleashes something that they never thought was possible before.
We have found that it opens up a new language, that you've given people a compass into understanding and a way to sort of point those, individual coaching conversations from leader to employee. And we're seeing a lot of success with that opening on a conversation that wasn't happening anymore.
We partnered strengths with 360s. So the conversation basically says, here's your 360, this is how you're showing up. And then we partner strengths with it and say, this is why you're showing up that way. Yeah, I think for the person leaving that room, they're changed. They look at their management style differently. They actually embrace it. I think in the past, the way the conversations went were basically, this is what you're doing wrong, right? And so they're constantly focused on benchmarking and measuring themselves against other managers. But the conversation this year was more a connection. It's more of, this is development, pure development. Managers were able to open up more and express some of the areas that they want to work on. And then they also walked away with a set of confidence, right? A boost of confidence rather, hey, I'm doing really well in these areas. And it's because I'm positive, or it's because I'm strategic. And they walked away with those aha moments. So we're doing team workshops right now throughout the organization, and the teams range from 3 people to 30 people. And what we're doing is really focusing on team dynamics. We integrate strengths within that.
We've also seen significant improvement in team dynamics. So learning to understand people based on their strengths and their sort of worldview, recognizing undiscovered or previously undiscovered talents and strengths, yearnings and desires that people had to express those strengths with new roles and responsibilities. It's dramatically changed the conversation, because now we find that these teams have a shorthand for talking amongst themselves, as well as cross-functionally with other teams about what their competencies are, what they're really good at, kind of what's in their swing zone, how other people can leverage them. So there's been lots of anecdotal information, as well as some concrete information about organizations doing a better job of meeting their metrics in a timely manner, and just feeling like they're being more successful at those things they're expected to do.
So it really encouraged a spirit of teamwork, regardless of location, because now they saw things in other center leaders that they could leverage where they were weak or strong, or vice versa. So I think it really gave everybody kind of a common language and a common ground to say, oh, I need your help with this because you're strong in communication, or I need your help in this because you're strong in analytic and I'm not. So I think it got them, like I said, to give them the language that enabled communication and collaboration and working together rather than us versus them.
From a team perspective, and one team in particular, the manager moved engagement massively in just a 12-month period by simply taking a strengths approach and aligning work within the team to match the people's strengths.
So hopefully this gives you an idea of how we could utilize Clifton strengths in working with others. You know, a lot of what we focused on thus far as it relates to the Clifton strengths was, how do your strengths explain who you are? How do your strengths help you understand your values and how you make decisions, right? And so now we're focusing on, how do your strengths interact with those of others, and in leadership development and also within teams. When we think about the idea of leadership, I always think about Warren Bennis, who's a major leadership guru. At one point in time, he was actually president of the University of Cincinnati in 1971 to 1978. He later became president of the University of Southern California, and that's when he sort of took off as a leadership guru. And Bennis said, becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. That simple, that difficult. So when we think about the idea of being leaders and how we utilize our strengths within the context of being a leader, you know, it's really simple to understand it, really simple to explain it, but it's difficult. It becomes difficult in explaining how it interacts with others. It also becomes difficult in how we actually implement it, right? And so keep in mind, there are some things that we need to really put out there when it comes to our Clifton strengths. First and foremost, our strengths are meant to be descriptive, not prescriptive. So to say that if you're a relator and you relate to people, I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it doesn't really, it doesn't say that if you are a relator that you're always going to be a relator, right? When we think about the combination of your strengths, those behaviors change, right? Using your strengths as a way to describe behavior and not box people into a set of concrete rules is really key. Okay. Again, we don't want to tell people what they're doing. We don't want to tell people you're this and you will exhibit these characteristics, right? That's not how we utilize our Clifton strengths. Okay. Our Clifton strengths are meant to be a measurement of your greatest potential, right? And it's a way of focusing on what you're good at and not your weaknesses. If you recall in part of the video, the woman was talking about challenges and weaknesses, and also how when they were focused on their weaknesses, it became more of a competition, right? And so, again, it's your Clifton strengths are a measurement of your potential, and it's focusing on what you're good at. It's focusing on your strengths. Okay. When we think about the idea of utilizing your strengths within teams, it's one approach in forming a balanced team. When we think about some of our best teams, we think about the teams that have balance in almost every aspect of operation, right? If you have too many of one thing, which we'll go over in a moment later on, it may prove either disastrous or lucky, right? So just keep that in mind. And then finally, our strengths allow us to connect behaviors to themes and begin to see how different themes and strengths can be leveraged for greater success. When you understand your top 5, when you understand also the top 5 of your team, you can then identify how you could achieve greatness, right? Or, and said differently, if you know each other's strengths, you know how to leverage their skills to develop a plan for success. Okay. Again, talent is spontaneous, repetitive, natural, recurring patterns of thought. Okay. A theme is grouping around common talents. Okay. A strength is when that theme is applied, right? When we think about fit, it's the role, when you're in a role that appreciates your strengths and allows you to thrive, right? There's good fit. And then finally, the goal of self-discovery and reflection as a means of understanding your strengths and talents and leveraging them for fit and success is really important, right? So in a sense, looking at this from top to bottom, it's a progression of your strengths. So, and we talked about this idea about utilizing your strengths for goal setting, right? So in a sense, in the very beginning, you have something that's recurring naturally. It comes naturally, or it comes second nature, right? The theme is grouping those common talents. The strength is applying that, and actually honing in and building on that. And fit is when you actually have a positive application of those strengths, right? And as you identify, goals towards your strengths for success, there's a process of self-discovery where you understand when to apply your strengths or when to apply your strengths differently, right? So those are some general ground thoughts on Clifton strengths as a reminder as we move forward, right? Thinking about the idea of management versus leadership, right? Again, when we think about management, it's talking about the daily operations, keeping things in order, organizing versus staffing, and staffing, and so forth, right? As you could read down the list. Pay attention to the keywords, okay? Management here is about controlling people and resources to get what the manager wants to accomplish. Okay. When you look on the right column, the idea of leadership, it's about facilitating change, engaging others in a shared vision, aligning people, right? Based on their strengths and talents and skills. Knowing your values and living your values are really key here. When we think about it, leadership is about creating an environment within which people can contribute, excel, and leave at the end of the day with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. The idea of being a leader is also mobilizing and aligning people and resources toward a shared vision versus what the manager wants to accomplish. Okay, key word there, right? Further, when we think about the idea and definition of leadership, okay, the folks at UCLA define a leader as this. A leader is not necessarily a person who holds a formal position of leadership or who is perceived as a leader by others. Rather, a leader is one who is able to affect positive change for the betterment of others, the community, and society. Okay. by this definition, everyone has the potential of being a leader. Okay. Moreover, the process of leadership cannot be described simply in terms of the behavior of an individual. Rather, leadership involves collaborative relationships that lead to collective action grounded in shared values of people who work together to affect positive change. Okay. And again, this is by the Higher Education Research Institute at UCLA. Okay. Pay attention to the key words here, right? When we think about those key words, right, we're thinking about leadership, right? We're also, and some other keywords to consider are relationships, action, shared values, leading to positive change, right? When we think about it in a formulaic sense, right? Leadership equates to relationships plus action plus shared values moving to positive change. That's what we're thinking about as it relates to leadership, right? But before we can build on this formula of leadership, we must consider who we are, right? And our personal strengths when we interact with others, our cohorts, our teams, our organizations, and so forth. And so when we think about our behaviors, and we think about the different strengths, I want to introduce to you another grouping of your strengths. And when we think about it, it's that of domains, right? And so here's a short video explaining those domains.
It's important to realize that those 34 themes are built on more than 70 years of interviews, of research, of observation into what goes right when people succeed. We also have a way to simplify these 34 into 4 different domains, and that comes from supplemental research about how do leaders lead. So your strengths domains essentially answer the question, how do I make sense of the world on a greater scale than just my individual themes? There are 4 of them: executing, strategic thinking, relationship building, and influencing.
When leaders look at those domains and fill in a team strengths grid, and they start understanding where are we as a team, what is our strongest domain, that tells us something about how the team works together. And again, I think it just amplifies where do we go first? What is our default when we have a project? Now, what we found is that what predicts the success of the team is not being balanced in all 4 domains, but knowing your strengths. So if a team knows who they are, how they get things done, that is a far bigger predictor of success than having balance in all 4 domains.
And so that's really important to note. You know, again, it's not having balance in all 4 domains, but also it's more so understanding those strengths. Okay. And so let me go over these strengths, these strengths domains for you. Okay. And when I do this, I'm also going to list which signature themes or strengths fall within that domain. If you get a sense of, you know, how they're defined and how you are defined, you kind of figure out what the themes are, or the domains, what the domains are, right? And so the first one is actually the executing domain, as mentioned earlier, and these are the 9 signature themes that go underneath the executing domain. These themes answer the question, how do I make things happen? Okay. They help you turn your ideas into reality. Okay. When teams need to implement a solution, they look to people within this theme, within this domain, who will work tirelessly toward the goal. Okay. These 9 themes are the hardest working of the bunch, right? They tend to get things done with speed, precision, accuracy. They put in the hard work now so that when it's time to move, they're ready to go. Okay. Putting ideas into action is the strength of the domain. Okay. So again, take a look at these 9 signature themes and sort of see where do you fall. The next one is the influencing domain. Okay. These themes answer the question, how do you influence others, right? They may help you take charge, speak up, and make sure others are heard. Okay. When teams need to sell their ideas to and out inside within the organization or outside the organization, they turn to these people with influencing themes to convince others. These 8 themes enable individuals to sell the big idea. They are able to take charge, speak up, and be heard. They are extremely helpful when you need to reach out to a broader audience or to meet a bigger goal. This can happen both internally within the team or to external constituents. They tend to influence forward, right? And so one of the things to keep in mind is when it comes to these signature themes within the influencing domain, these are the people that are sociable. They're the ones that are selling an idea. They're also the ones that are trying to put an idea forward, right? The next one, though, is complementary to that, and that is that of the relationship building domain. Okay, when you think about people with these strengths, okay, the question is, how do I build and nurture strong relationships? Okay, the people within this domain help hold the team together. Okay, while the influencing domain is set to sell an idea, the relationship building domain is made so that, or is there so that you're able to understand the person you're selling to. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. While certainly not the only themes that deal with people, okay, they're all human and they're all about people. These 9 themes and the people with these 9 themes have the ability to take the human component into the equation. They looked at how individuals fit in the bigger picture, and they create pathways to help them thrive within the organization. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind with the people in the relationship building domain. The final domain is that of strategic thinking. Okay, and these themes answer the question, how do you absorb, think about, and analyze information and situations? Okay, they may help you make better decisions and create outcomes. When teams need to focus on what could be, they turn to people with the strategic thinking themes to stretch the team's thinking for the future. Okay, when a plan needs to be made or a new idea created for solving a problem, these 8 themes can help accomplish that, whether it's thinking into a current problem or dreaming about how to overcome tomorrow. The strategic thinking themes can take a thought or idea and look for the best way to move forward on it. Okay, not only in terms of forward thinking, but also keeping in mind history. Okay, so when you think about your five strengths, okay, look at this image. Where do your 5 strengths lie? Which domain are you most dominant in? Okay, so again, think about these questions. Which domain is dominant for you? And what I mean by that is if you have more than 2 in a domain, right? That's your dominant domain, right? If you have a 2, 2, and 1 situation, pick one that you feel is most reoccurring. Okay. The next question is, which domain are you least dominant? Okay. Next, are your coworkers or peers aware of your talents and strengths in the domain you're most dominant in? So for example, if I look to, let's say, Mackenzie, okay? And I'll share this in a moment. Mackenzie's top 5 strengths are all within the influencing domain, right? For Mackenzie and for those that know Mackenzie, how are they? Are people aware that her strengths are in the influencing domain? right? Or, let's say me, me on the other hand, I have 2 in the relationship building, and then next is influencing. I have 1 in influencing, 1 in strategic thinking, and then the final one is in the executing domain, right? When you think about how I relate to students and how I build relationship with students, it's some people think it's pretty obvious. Others think that I'm more analytical, and so they see more of my strategic thinking domain. But how are people aware of your domains, right? That's the thing to keep in mind. And then the last question is, have you been blind to any of your lesser domains? When you think about your domains where there's like maybe 1 theme in the domain, does it come up? Are you aware of that strength and the implications of that domain, right? And so when we think about your number 5, right? So when I think about number 5 here, a lot of your 5th position strengths, and I'm talking about the class as a whole, are actually in the executing domain, okay? So something to keep in mind. In the video in the very beginning, there was the gentleman was talking about a strengths grid, right? And so this is an example of a strengths grid for a specific team, right? And actually, let me bring it out here. I took your theme, your strengths, and actually laid it out for the class, right? And so a majority of your strengths actually as a whole, when I look at the class as a whole, are in the executing domain. There's about 70 strengths, 70, let me say that differently. 70 identified strengths are in the executing domain, followed by strategic thinking with 56, and then relationship building, and then influencing. Okay. Again, when we think about our strengths in the strengths grid here, bigger picture, it's not all about finding the balance all the time, but more so understanding where your strengths lie, right? So when as I said here, when I pointed out that a majority of people's strengths are in the executing and strategic thinking domains, right? When we think about developing a plan of action, right? Yeah. If you're aware that you need to sell the idea or take into account the individuals on your team, understanding that and actually utilizing the people that have those strengths in those domains is really important. That's the thing, right? Oftentimes what I see happening is when you have a group of people in the executing domain, right? They don't take into account the other 4 domains. And again, it's not about balance. It's more so recognizing your strengths, recognizing your talents, and recognizing the individuals with those strengths. Okay. And as a team lead or as a manager, how do you leverage the strengths? Thinking about it in these domains, right? So something to think about, right? So in the end, and I'm going to give you time to actually think about this and explore this. Again, take a look at your list of strengths, identify which themes are in the specific domain, okay? And I'm gonna point out that that graphic right here. So look at your top 5. What is your most dominant domain, okay? Again, if you have 2 or more, that's your dominant domain. If you have 2 and 2, then that you have to pick one that fits naturally for you. Okay. So think about these domains. Think about your strengths in those domains. And so what I want for you to do is I'm going to put you in, let's see, there's about 37 of you. I am going to put you in probably groups of 12, or I'm going to create 12 groups. There's about 3 or 4 in each one. Okay. And so what I want for you to do when you're in groups, think about your strengths, think about the domains. Okay. I want for you to answer these questions. First one is, you get the answer, and just fill in the prompt. You get the best of me when, okay, whether it be a situation, a circumstance, or what. You get the best of me when, okay. Like, so like, for example, if you're in the strategic building domain and you're high analytical and futuristic, okay, you get the best of me when I have data in front of me, right? That's an example. You get the worst of me when, right? Again, complete the stem. Going in the idea of, if you're in the strategic thinking domain, you get the worst of me when I don't have all, and you get the worst of me when I don't have all of the resources available to me, right? Something to that effect. You can count on me to maybe look at data from a 5,000 foot level, right? What I need from you, and this is thinking about if you're sharing this with a group, what I need for you is blank, right? So again, when we think about your strengths and the domains that you're in, right? You get the best of me when, and this is within a group situation, you get the worst of me when, okay? You can count on me to, what's the one thing that you're good at that it's a guaranteed lock, right? And then this is what I need from you. So what are you asking from a team member or group when it comes to being successful, okay? So think about those questions. I'll put that in the chat, but I'm gonna start your groups now. All right, not everyone is back yet. We'll give it a few more seconds for people to jump back in. Okay, so big picture here, right? When we think about these 4 sentence stems, right? As you were sharing, what commonalities were you noticing amongst each other as you were sharing? Anyone?
I missed the question. Can you repeat the question, please?
So as you were sharing with each other and sharing, your responses to these sentence stems, what kind of commonalities were you noticing as everyone was sharing?
In our group, we actually had quite polarizing responses, I think, in terms of you get the best and you get the worst. But I think the kind of end goal from us was you can count on us, even though like we need different things to work best. Like we're gonna get the job done, whether it's as expected or in a different manner.
Thanks, John. And that's exactly what I'm asking. You know, and when you think about your other groups, what did you learn as you were sharing?
We all agreed that we respond better and work better, more efficiently when there's a deadline, as opposed to just long-term projects that you're supposed to make projects on or progress on.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks, Sean. And, you know, big picture though is so if you're leading this group, right, having that in front of you and understanding that from your team is really key. I think one of the things, and I'm not saying this as a soothsayer or as a fortune teller here, but one of the things I do notice with a lot of folks when they participate in their senior design capstone projects is they lack a lack of understanding of what their teammates can actually do and how they can actually perform. There is that impression, you know, over the years when they've been in the same groups and so forth. But when you're thinking about when you're thinking about something like a senior design project where there's not a whole lot of certainty, or the parameters are actually established by the group, behaviors become different. And when we think about how we perform, right, the amount of and level of prediction is no longer there. And so these 4 sentence stems become really important as you start thinking about forming your teams and so forth. And even when you think about, you know, being on co-op, when you think about your work groups, when you think about your supervisor, if you shared this with your supervisor would then know what types of projects to give you, or what challenges you really are looking forward to, or, you know, if your manager is approaching you with a specific project, they know ahead of time of what they need to provide you so that you feel comfortable and you can perform at your best. Okay. So those are some things to keep in mind. When we think about the idea of the domains, right? The domains help you understand where your behaviors are leading to. You know, if a majority of your behaviors are in strategic thinking, right? Think of, you know, not only are you able to better explain how you operate, but also what you need from people in the other domains, right? Bigger picture, when we think about how we lead each other, how we lead in groups, having a command of not only your strengths, but also a general understanding of the strengths of others helps you perform at a level where you can be seen as a leader, right? And again, when we think about that leader, it is about building those relationships for the action, the shared values. In another sense, when we think about you know, how a lot of our folks are in the executing domain, you know, the idea of action, right? Values are more so for the shared values are more so for, you know, what's in it for us, right? Or said differently, that these are the parameters of the project that we agreed to, right? In terms of the quality of our project. And the other part is relationships, right? How do we build relationships to lead to positive change? Okay. And so when we think about how our strengths interact with each other, right? You know, there is some element of understanding how that can be recontextualized in a leadership role. So another way to also think about this is actually by thinking about your five themes, right? And jotting down keywords, right? When you think about it, if you have 5 strengths, how do they interact with everyone else, right? And I wish I had my camera on or working. I wish I could show you. But take your 5 themes, Okay. And think about the definition for every single one, right? Take the definition of, say, maximizer with that of, oh, I don't know, context. What is, if you combine the definition of those two themes, that's a one way to figure out how those themes are paired, right? And so when we think about maximizer and context, you know, it's really about, and I'll say it off the top of my head, that if we had to redefine maximizer plus context, it's the idea of this thought that while history has its share of failure, studying history successes is better because it gives a better return on investment, right? Or maximizer and oh, I don't know, competition, right? Again, take the definition of maximizer, take the definition of competition. And when you think about it, when the redefinition of the two is when I win, I want to win well, right? And then winning without doing my best is not enough. My victory must have quality, right? As opposed to competition, it's all about the victory, right? So when you add in an element of the other theme, you're now redefining what the combination of those themes are, right? And more importantly, when you think about how those themes interact with other parts of your strengths in a specific domain, again, it's all about understanding your strengths and understanding how they interface, and more importantly, how they interface with others. Okay. So hopefully next week my camera will be working again. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.